From the creators of the popular science show with millions of YouTube subscribers comes the Minute Earth podcast. Every episode of the show dives deep into a science question you might not even know you had. But once you hear the answer, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Why do rivers curve? Why did the T-Rex have such tiny arms? And why do so many more kids need glasses now than they used to? Spoiler alert, it isn't screen time. Our team of scientists digs into the research and breaks it down into a short, entertaining explanation, jam-packed with science facts and terrible puns. Subscribe to Minute Earth wherever you like to listen.
Hi, friends. Are you looking for a new podcast? Maybe something you can share with your littles? Something that has some storytelling in it? Well, then look no further. We have Storytime with Philip and Mommy, where my son and I sit and discuss all the great books that you might love while we read them. So, Little Golden Books, Berenstain Bears, and even the new classics like Bluey. We sit down, we read, we discuss, and we have so much fun doing it. Come and join us. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Well, hey everybody, Mick Sullivan back again. I just talked to you a couple weeks ago, if you're listening to this in real time. There was an episode that we did about ice, and if you haven't listened to that one, you should listen to it. You don't have to listen to it before you listen to this one, but they are definitely related. The last one was on ice. This one is on ice cream. There's a couple different stories and different threads all wrapped up into this. I think you'll enjoy it. You've heard episodes like this before, so, food ones are also always very fun. If you're a newer listener, welcome to The Past and the Curious. This is a history show for kids and families, and it's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy the show. I know I had fun putting this together. We're close to our 100th episode, so I've got some information about that at the end, because I have a call out to everyone out there in the listening podcast world. So more on that later. In the meantime, let's talk about ice cream. I don't know about you, but ice cream is not a seasonal thing for me. My family eats ice cream in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. It's easy to think cold treats for warm weather, but somehow ice cream has melted the hearts of so many that its chilly, sweet pleasures are bound by no calendar. Ice cream in July or ice cream in December. Of course, hot weather is the prime time for scarfing ice cream, and that's when the most ice cream gets eaten. And if you were to get a hankering on a blistering sunny afternoon these days, think of the options. A grocery store, a convenience store, a drive-thru, one of the many ice cream shops lining the streets of whichever town you call home. Yes, my friends, we live in an ice cream paradise. A vanilla Valhalla, a chocolatopia, a divine abode for Rocky Road. But it wasn't always easy to fill our cup, or cone, whichever is your preference. In the past, ice cream was a pretty serious luxury. If you listened to our previous episode about ice itself,
no cream, just the ice,
you'd probably guess that getting the frozen water to make it was problem number one. Would you be right? Yeah, you'd be right. That's why we made that episode first. But it wasn't just the ice that was hard to come by. It was the sugar and the salt, too. This is why when we hear about ice cream in early America, we often hear about how much George Washington and Thomas Jefferson loved it. That's right, those two famous dudes from the history books liked ice cream as much as you or me. But they were Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. They had power and resources that most people did not have. So it wasn't an ice cream for all type of world. Presidential love notwithstanding, ice cream is not an American invention. It's hard to be sure exactly where it did come from, and it's also hard to know exactly what we can call ice cream. For example, we know that Roman soldiers really enjoyed eating snow flavored with delicious things. That's something that people still do today. Ever had maple syrup on snow? I have. It's great. But it's not really cream, is it? Most likely, the first cream-based cold treat was enjoyed in ancient China. And maybe that made its way in story or practice to Europe. And if so, many people say that as far as European ice cream origins are concerned, we have the same people to thank that we have for so many other delicious things. The Italians. But even after it made its way to America, ice cream was not a part of everyone's lives. George Washington was wealthy. He was wealthy before he was president, and he was wealthy after. And as a rich man in Virginia in the 1700s, that meant a number of things. He could buy all of the salt he wanted. He could buy all of the tools he wanted. He could buy all of the sugar he wanted, which was a very expensive commodity at the time. He could build an ice house to hold ice year-round, something a common citizen would not have. And it also meant that he owned the lives of many enslaved people, whose labor was used to keep the plantation running. And it was the enslaved people who harvested ice and who did most of the cooking at Mount Vernon, which was the Washington estate. This included making ice cream. But even if a regular family of the 1700s did have the tools and ingredients, it took so much work to make ice cream that there was no way that they would use their valuable time making an indulgent treat which would immediately melt. They would need to do other things, tending or preserving crops to get through the winter, cutting firewood, making clothes, or handling any other important matters around the house. Even if they had the ingredients, most people did not have the time to make ice cream. Historians have found an inventory list from the Washingtons' lives, and the document shows that the Washington family had lots of ice cream paraphernalia. Several hand-powered machines, special dishes, spoons, and even molds. At the time, it was common for lucky ice cream eaters to shape their ice cream into decorative designs with little ice cream molds before enjoying. Think about freezing your ice in a decorative ice cube tray. It's the same thing, but with your dessert. Ice cream flowers, birds, even pyramids. Shapes. Okay, yeah. But what about flavors? What kind of ice cream are we talking about in the 1700s? A few of the common flavors might sound familiar. Raspberry, pistachio, or lemon. One of the most popular flavors, though, was Parmesan. That's right, Parmesan cheese ice cream. Honestly, it probably tastes better than your initial reaction might lead you to believe. I've never tasted such a thing, but I would totally give it a try. Along with those flavors, you probably noticed that I didn't mention vanilla. And that's because while vanilla was well known as a spice, it was expensive, really expensive, and very hard to get. But all of that changed in the early 1840s, which just so happens to be the time that thousands of regular people started enjoying ice cream at home also. Vanilla flavoring comes from the seed pod of a flower known as a vanilla orchid, and that orchid is native to Mexico and other areas in South America. When Europeans developed a taste for this delicious and expensive flavor, they tried to grow the flower in other places. But what they didn't know was that also in Mexico, there was a specific type of bee which pollinated the flowers so that they would produce the seed pods and grow more plants. Without these specific bees buzzing about, pollination would never occur, and plants would never bear fruit. Other bees just didn't seem to be interested, so when the orchids were planted in other places, the treasured vanilla-producing plants just died and did not reproduce. One of the places where plantation owners tried to grow vanilla orchids was on an island in the Indian Ocean, off the coast of the African continent. It wasn't working, at least until 1841, when a 12-year-old boy changed history. His name was Edmund Albius, and he was enslaved on the island of Réunion, which had been colonized by France. He had a natural knack for botany, and while experimenting with a thin stick and a particular motion swiping his fingers, he developed a way to pollinate the orchids successfully. His vanilla victory had stumped even the most famous scientists of the day. Before long, the island was exporting more vanilla than Mexico. Edmund's technique meant vanilla could be grown all around the world, which brought down the price. And that meant it could also be eaten all around the world. 2 years after the big vanilla breakthrough, a new development would rock the ice cream world. Nancy Johnson was born in New York, but she was living in Philadelphia when she was awarded the first patent in America for an ice cream maker. If you've ever made ice cream yourself, you've probably used something like or influenced by Nancy's clever design. There are basically 3 parts to her ice cream contraption: a round container, sort of like a narrow barrel, a second smaller round metal container, and a paddle with a crank handle that fits into the smaller metal container. The outer container is filled with ice and salt, which helps it get really cold. And the inner container is filled with ice cream ingredients and then placed into the icy outer container, so the salty ice is all around the outer surface. Then the hand-powered crank turns the paddles inside. This scrapes the freezing ice cream off the inside walls, mixes the ingredients, and adds some air to the cream. So when it freezes, the delicious dish is silky smooth and not a solid mass.
Having ice cream dreams? With one of these babies, you, my friend, will be up to your ears in the flavor of your choice in 30 minutes or less. Sure, you might have a tired arm, but it's worth it. You can switch arms or tag team it with your family. Everyone earns their dessert by taking some time turning the crank.
Thanks to the growing availability of ice, not to mention the plummeting cost of sugar, salt, spices, and other flavors, this invention helped spark a frozen revolution. Families could do it themselves, and they were more likely to. It wouldn't be such a drain on time and resources to make ice cream. It would just be a delicious diversion. Nancy was a pioneer in other ways, too. Typically, in America at this time, married women would lose their legal rights to their husband. Financial matters, contracts, property were almost always ceded over in marriage. Often, when a woman had an idea worthy of a patent, she would apply through her husband or another male relative. But Nancy applied for her patent under her own name, and she handled all of the legal matters on her own. A few years later, she sold the patent, but her impact was made. Ice cream culture would never be the same. Even the electric ice cream mixers used today commercially and in homes owe a debt to Johnson's artificial freezer, as it was called at the time. She lived until the age of 95, and after the Civil War, worked as an educator in the Port Royal experiment, which was designed to train and educate formerly enslaved people. She died in 1890 and is buried in Washington, D.C.'s Oak Hill Cemetery, which happens to be one of my all-time favorite cemeteries, one of the best I've ever been in. So if you're in the area, go visit Nancy and get an ice cream cone.
We're the All Creatures Podcast. Each week, Angie and I explore and share amazing details about the many animals we share our world with.
Plus, Chris and I are both PhD scientists and educators. So we do the deep dives in the scientific research and then come back and share what we learn in a fun and casual way. We also speak with other scientists, animal experts, activists, and many other conservation enthusiasts from all over the planet.
So you can find the All Creatures Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
All you need is a few minutes to start your day off with something historic when you listen to the This Day in History podcast. Every day there's a new episode for you to listen and learn about what happened that day way back when. Today could be the day a famous mobster met their end, or the first milestone for humans in space. Who knows what history today holds? Find out when you listen and subscribe to This Day in History wherever you get your podcasts. That's This Day in History wherever you get your podcasts.
For this month's You Have 30 Seconds, Evie in Canada is going to tell us about a really remarkable female archaeologist. Take it away, Evie.
My name is Evie. Today I will be telling you about Maud Cunningham. She's a female archaeologist. She lived from 1869 to 1951. She and her husband excavated a Neolithic burial, and for 3 years she helped raise money to buy Stonehenge and the land around for anyone to see because she wanted everyone to participate in archaeology.
Thanks, Evie. Great job. Got a lot of information in there. I love it when that happens. If anyone else out there is like Evie and you have a 30 seconds, all you got to do is get a phone or an iPad or a computer, whatever, some way to record. There's voice memo recorders. You just record it, and then you can email it to me. Put 30 seconds in the subject line. Tell me a little bit about yourself if you want me to include that, and then share it with the world. Thank you so much, Evie.
It's quiz time. It's quiz time. It's quiz time. Time.
It's true. It is true. It is quiz time. Yes. So, they're ice cream quiz questions, as you might have guessed. Here we go. Question number 1. What country can say that their people eat more ice cream than any other country per capita? It's not the most consumed collectively, but individually on average. What country eats the most ice cream per capita? Shout out to New Zealand. New Zealand, you eat the most ice cream per capita. The most devoted ice cream eaters. Residents there consume an average of 7.5 gallons each year, every single person. The USA is in second place at 5.5 gallons per person. Okay, question number 2. Many ice cream companies have a head taster. Very special position. Also sounds like a pretty awesome job. It is common that this head taster uses a very special spoon made of something that has no flavor or aftertaste, so that the taster can actually get the purest flavor of their ice cream product as they test. What are these official special taster spoons made out of? I may have made that a little more convoluted of a question than it needed to be, but I was just so excited to tell you, if you didn't know, that the answer is solid gold. Gold has absolutely no impact on flavor, so a taster with very fine tasting capabilities will never be influenced by an aftertaste from this golden spoon. Some master tasters actually insure their tongues also, because their tongue is such an important part of their job. Tasting is serious business. Okay, question number 3, the third and final question. What is the most popular flavor of ice cream in the entire world? Surprise! It's vanilla. Thanks, Edmund. Second place is chocolate, of course. What's your favorite flavor? I am partial to mint chocolate chip, personally. In the 1880s, something unusual began happening in American cities, especially in the most crowded neighborhoods. On the hottest days of the year, kids heard the slow pace of someone's footsteps. Some heard a song, or someone whistling. Some even heard a metallic squeak, like a rusty wheel, slowly turning the corner, but just out of sight. Everyone knew who it was when they heard it. They didn't need to see him. It was the Hokey Pokey Man. When the Hokey Pokey Man came, everyone ran. The Hokey Pokey Man seemed to have an otherworldly ability to be in many places at the same time, on different street corners in the same city, in different cities across the globe. It seemed like the Hokey Pokey Man was always around, or as if just by thought, you could conjure him up. Just kidding, it's not scary. The Hokey Pokey Man was everywhere in the summer because there were lots of Hokey Pokey Men, and they went where the people were, the streets of crowded cities. And often, he did squeak. That was the wheels of his pushcart. And he did sing. La la la. At least some of them did. That's how you knew he was coming. And the kids did run. They ran towards him, and each one of them had a penny in their hands. They'd line up, and when it was their turn, they'd put that sweaty penny into his palm. And in return, the Hokey Pokey Man would lay out a sheet of paper onto which he'd plop out a scoop of shaved ice. And then he'd pour a flavored syrup on the ice, and off the kid would run. happy with their quick, cool treat and hoping that they'd have another penny for the next time he came around. In many ways, Hokey Pokey Men were the original ice cream men. And they weren't just in America. In England and other places, the practice was the same, a pushcart for mobile refreshment. Still today, a popular flavor of ice cream in New Zealand is called Hokey Pokey. It's a delicious combo of vanilla ice cream and honeycomb toffee, both of which oddly happen to relate to the guy from the last story, Edmund Albius, whose gift to ice cream culture involved both vanilla and bees. Anyway, no one is totally sure as to why they were called Hokey Pokey Men. Did they put their scoop right in and take their scoop right out? After you took a bite, did you want to shake it all about? Eh? In England, it may have come from a common phrase that they would sing or call out to let kids know that the getting was good. Or it may have been because Italian Americans working as pushcart ice cream men would call out "Oche poco," which means, "Oh, how cheap." You could see how this phrase "Oche poco" might be changed to the more familiar "Hokey Pokey." Or maybe it was related to the word hocus pocus. They're similar too, right? But the simple fact is, we don't know what it's all about. Also, plain ice and syrup wasn't the only treat that every Hokey Pokey Man had to offer. Depending on when and where you were, you could have purchased a different kind of frozen treat, and many of them involved cream. And as we've learned from the last episode, and our entire episode on bad milk, if a food service worker doesn't keep things clean, especially when milk is involved, well, people are going to get sick. And Hokey Pokey ice cream men were no different. Beyond flopping it right there on a piece of paper, another common way of delivering an icy treat at this time was in a small glass. They were called penny lickers, and you might recall that we've covered them before, but let's cover them again because they are fun to talk about. It goes like this. You pay a penny. The vendor gives you a little glass filled with ice cream. No spoon. So what do? You stick your tongue in there and you get your ice cream out like a dog at a water bowl. And once you've licked it clean, you hand it back over. The vendor dunks it in some old gray water, and there's probably not even any soap in there. If it's a busy day, within a few minutes, someone else is going to pay a penny and be licking that same dirty glass not long after you. Which of course means that unless you were one of the first penny liquor purchasers that day, well, someone else had already licked the glass before you did. Probably a lot of people. Ew. Gross. Yeah, it's gross, and that's not even taking into account the safe or unsafe storage of milk products in the hot sun. So people got sick, and after getting sick, many decided it wasn't worth the risk to buy a questionable treat from a Hokey Pokey Man in your neighborhood anymore. Maybe you were lucky enough to have one of Mrs. Johnson's ice cream making machines and the ice to make the magic happen. If not, your summer was probably going to be pretty hot. Until a guy in Ohio decided to take ice cream to the streets in a new way, safely and deliciously, I might add. Harry Burt was his name, and chocolate-dipped ice cream was his game. He was a confectioner by trade, which means he made and sold delicious things like candies and sweets. And he wasn't the first person to take a bar of vanilla ice cream and cover it in chocolate, but thanks to the suggestion of his children, he may have been the first person to put a wooden stick in there. You see, his kids liked the treat, of course, but they didn't like the melty chocolate-stained fingers that followed. A stick was the perfect handle for maximum ice cream enjoyment with minimal frustrating mess. But this story is not about a stick. It's about the alternative to a questionably safe Hokey Pokey Man's pushcart filled with cold treats. Burt's Bars, now with 100% more stick, had some distinct advantages over the competition. They were portable, they were easy to package, and typically speaking, you shouldn't get sick after eating one. They're not dangerous. As long as you don't eat the stick, of course. Bert looked around and got to thinking. And then his idea came.
Hey, you know cars?
Cars? What do you mean? Like automobiles?
Yeah, you know them?
Yes, I know them. We're in one right now, Bert. You're driving it. What's your point?
What if we had a big car, like with lots of storage?
Are you thinking of a truck?
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, you know trucks?
Bert, what are you doing here, man? Where is this going?
Well, you know ice cream.
Yes, I'm eating one of your ice cream bars right now. It's delicious. And my hands are so clean. But yes, I obviously know ice cream. I scream for ice cream. And I'm going to scream at you if you don't get to the point.
I just think it would be a good idea to put these ice cream bars I made in a truck and sell them around town.
Like high-speed Hokey Pokey Man?
Exactly. Yeah, forget push carts. We'll be motorized, baby.
It'll never work. People don't trust ice cream on street corners anymore. Too many tummy aches. Or worse.
My bars won't give you a tummy ache.
People don't know that.
Well, what if we dress the ice cream guys up in really nice, clean, white uniforms like scientists or hospital workers? We'll give them hats and ties, and the truck, it'll be all white and shiny and refrigerated. And we'll show everyone how clean we are. You know, just by looking clean.
This might just be crazy enough to work.
Bert's ice cream bars became known as Good Humor Bars, and before long, the Good Humor Man was driving a truck full of them around the many streets of America to the great pleasure of children. Of course, there wasn't one driver, there were thousands of good humor men. And finally, in the 1960s, there were also good humor women. It was with these ice cream drivers and big white delivery vehicles that the idea of an ice cream truck came to be. The first trucks in the 1920s had only one door, right on the driver's side, and after ringing his bell to get everyone's attention, the driver would hop out onto the street or the curb of the sidewalk, and he'd head around back, where he'd open up the refrigerated section and start selling ice cream bars faster than you can do the hokey pokey. According to the Smithsonian, in 1932, over 14 million Good Humor bars were sold in New York and Chicago alone. Millions more were savored in other cities, as Good Humor, despite competition and copycats, became the street-based ice cream leader. The trucks continued with the bells and bars through the 1970s. But as with all things, the industry changed. Good Humor trucks disappeared from the streets around that time, and they were replaced by less consistent ice cream delivery vehicles. Today, the bulk of ice cream bars consumed come from the grocery store or ice cream shops. The recipe is still the same as it ever was. Vanilla ice cream, chocolate shell coating, wooden stick. That's what it's all about. All right, thank you all for listening. This was episode 97 of The Past and the Curious with me, Mick Sullivan. I have some people that I need to thank, and I'm excited about this because, it sounds like one of them's birthday related. Birthday related for twins, it looks like as well. Tommy and Michael Venturini of Wheaton, Illinois. Happy birthday. I know you're turning 7 in September. It's so cool that you enjoy the show, and I'm glad that this is part of your birthday experience. I'm glad it's part of your everyday experience. Anytime you listen to the show, that really warms my heart. And Tommy and Michael, happy birthday, guys. So glad that you're out there. Got another pair of siblings that I need to send a shout out to as well. Thank you for your support, Lucas and Kaylin Hines. The Hineses in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Lucas and Kaylin, hello to you. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope you hear this message and it makes you smile. Makes me smile saying it. So thanks, Lucas and Kaylin, and thanks, Tommy and Michael. I also need to tell everyone that in November we will be releasing the 100th episode of The Past and the Curious. And yeah, the Underwear Chronicles and other bonus episodes that, when you add that up, we've already released over 100 productions, but there's something exciting about 100 full episodes. I didn't think that I would make it that far when I started this show back in 2016. So I want you to help us celebrate. So if you're so inclined and the show means something to you, I'm asking that you send in a recording and tell me who you are, where you are, and what you like about the show. And if possible, I'll use it on the show. Or, and this is really fun, send me a drawing or some art or a note. I would love to hear from you. And the ones that are shareable, I will share. I really, really appreciate everyone hanging around for 100 episodes. So let's get to 100 more, eh? Let me know that you're out there. If you've got something to send to me that's audio, or you just want to drop an email note, you can send it to hello@thepastandthecurious. Or if you would like to send something in the mail, you should send it to the Fraser History Museum. Mick Sullivan, courtesy of the Fraser History Museum at 829 West Main Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. And I'll put that on my website. I'm going to put it on there tonight, so it'll be there when you listen to this episode, okay? Thank you all so much for listening. Thanks to the Patreon sponsors. Those are, if you want to join Patreon, get a shout out, and also find ad-free versions of the show. They will be there. I'm Mick Sullivan. This has been The Past and the Curious. Thank you so much. Happy September, everyone.